Bro, I swear to God, I'll shoot the fuck out of you.
Shoot
Y'all
me
get
right
out of my
now.
house.
Shoot
Y'all
me
get
right
out of my
now.
house.
Shoot me right now.
Bro, I swear to God,
Shoot
bro.
me right now.
Take my son.
No.
I hate you over the fucking year, bro.
Hey, you supposed to be family.
Nah, get the fuck out of here. You in my house.
Hey. Stop. Stop. Okay.
But there are people who have been indicted in the public space, and it hasn't been true. And so I think Jay Z's tone was exactly. But see, I saw Puffy say the same, and then a video came out.
Yeah.
Ray J is finally spilling the secrets he swore he would never tell, and what he is revealing about Beyoncé and Jay Z is threatening to tear apart the carefully constructed empire they have spent decades building. This comes at a moment when the walls around the Carters were already cracking, with the Epstein files naming them in government documents and a shooter opening fire at Rihanna's home just 2 months later. Now, a dying insider with nothing left to lose has decided to speak, and the machine that has always controlled the narrative has gone silent in a way that sounds less like strategy and more like something else. The question is no longer whether the system is under pressure. The question is whether it can survive at all.
Beyoncé for sure. I love her. Like, I love Beyoncé. Jay Z too, I really admire.
2 months earlier, the Department of Justice released millions of pages from the Epstein files. Among them was a call log showing Rihanna's name as a recipient of recent calls from Jeffrey Epstein's network. Also in the files was an FBI crisis intake report naming Jay Z in an unverified assault allegation from a public tip line. The DOJ explicitly warned that the documents may include fake or falsely submitted material. But the documents exist, the names are there, and the proximity between the January release and the March shooting has created a question that law enforcement has not yet answered. That question now hangs over everything. The shooting and the files are not the only forces converging. A third pressure point has emerged from inside the Carter orbit itself. Ray J, a longtime figure in the industry who spent years publicly defending Jay Z and Beyoncé, has declared a one-sided war on the empire he once protected. In early January 2026, the singer was hospitalized in Las Vegas for heart issues and pneumonia. He later said doctors told him his heart was operating at 25% and gave him months to live. He said 2027 would be a wrap. In the weeks that followed, he began a campaign of leaks, accusations, and public statements that insiders now describe as a defector's final act. What makes Ray J's current position so destabilizing is that he was never a neutral observer. For years, he was one of the Carters' most vocal defenders. When Jaguar Wright went on Piers Morgan and made claims about Jay Z and Beyoncé, Ray J stepped forward and shut it down. He said Jay Z was an OG. He said Beyoncé had never made a mistake and was a role model for young girls. He positioned himself as loyal at a time when loyalty inside that machine meant something. That history turns his current war into something more dangerous than a random attack. A defender who becomes a destroyer does not walk away clean. He walks away carrying whatever he was defending.
And very, very honored that I got the response and the open heart, and people welcomed the album. The love I got from the country community tonight really made me feel so seen, and I'm very...
The timing of his shift is what makes the situation feel like it is accelerating. His health crisis came first, documented in January with a hospitalization and his own statements about a ticking clock. Then the Epstein files landed in the same month, naming people inside his world. Then the shooting happened in March. Now Ray J is leaking, talking, and signaling that the walls around the Carter empire are coming down from the inside. A person with a terminal prognosis is not a typical whistleblower. There is no time for negotiation. There is no incentive to hold back. And the fact that his public shift aligns exactly with the moment federal documents and a criminal investigation have put the same names under pressure is the kind of convergence that does not happen by accident. The paradox at the center of all this is that Ray J's past loyalty and his current war are two sides of the same coin. He was inside the system. He defended it. Now he appears to be trying to tear it apart. That reversal is too large to be explained by a simple falling out. Something shifted, and the shift happened after his health collapsed, after the Epstein files came out, and before the shooting at Rihanna's home. The question that runs through everything is what he knows. The second question is why he is saying it now, with the window closing at the exact moment when the system is already under fire from two other directions. Three forces are moving at once. an open shooting investigation with a motive still unknown, federal files that place Rihanna and Jay Z inside the Epstein network on paper, and a defector from inside the Carter system who has started speaking as if his time is almost gone. Any one of those would be a story on its own. Together, they create a pressure field that the Carter empire has not faced before. The machine that has controlled its image for decades is now being tested from multiple directions at the same time. And the machine has gone quiet.
So you can't, your mental has to change around it because it's a battle. He's going to, once he gets through 2027, because he'll have to like mentally kind of be in a space to keep up with it and take care of himself.
First has to stop, of course, and now that's the most important thing. And lower the stress, and hopefully he understands that and spends that time with his family.
The silence from the Carter camp is itself a signal. There have been no statements about the leaks, no denials of the allegations circulating, and no commentary on the Epstein files or the shooting. When a machine built on image control stops controlling the image, it means something has changed. It means the usual mechanisms are either not working or are being held back. In the absence of a response, speculation fills the space. The vacuum becomes its own pressure, and every day that passes without a word makes the silence feel heavier. Ray J is not acting like someone who expects to be taken to court. He is acting like someone who has already done the calculation. His health gives him a kind of immunity that no lawyer can grant. There is no version of this where he walks back what he says. His words will freeze as his final position, and that creates a permanence that normal disputes do not have. Whatever he is releasing now is not a negotiation, it is a record. And because his prognosis is public, the usual strategy of waiting out a critic does not work. There is no waiting out a clock that has already been set. The unresolved shooting adds a layer of danger that cannot be separated from the rest. A woman with an AR-15 fired at a home where children were present. 10 people were inside. The shooter's social media showed fixation, but the motive is still under investigation. Investigators have not ruled out any possibility, and the timing, coming so soon after federal files named Rihanna and Jay Z, means that the question of who wanted Rihanna's house shot will not stay contained inside a simple stalker narrative. The context around that question has already become too large, and the longer the motive remains unknown, the more the surrounding pressure fills the space that an answer would occupy.
They wanted that girl, the way that Rihanna wants me, she's the one who wants me. The way that Rihanna wants to be shows that we're not going to show this right now. But this is my heart, Lord, and I am expecting and waiting in that beautiful time for you to show me what you're going to do and how you're going to deliver this.
The convergence of these three forces is what makes the current moment different from anything that has come before. The Epstein files gave the speculation institutional weight. The shooting gave it real-world danger, and Ray J gave it a narrator from inside the system. The combination means that the story is no longer about any single allegation or document. It is about whether the system itself can survive a defector who knows where the doors are, at a moment when the doors are already being tested from the outside. What happens next depends on what Ray J releases, what investigators find, and whether anyone else inside the Carter orbit decides that silence is no longer the safest option. The machine has survived attacks before, but never with a dying insider leaking from within, while an active criminal investigation and federal files converge on the same names. That is not a pattern the system was built to handle. The walls were built to keep things out, not to hold when something breaks from the inside. And Ray J has already signaled that he is that something. The explanation for Ray J's sudden war against the Carters arrived through a man who once helped build one of the industry's most famous false stories. Jonathan Hay, Rihanna's former publicist during her early Roc Nation years, began speaking publicly in recent weeks about what he claims happened behind doors that were supposed to stay closed. According to Hay, Ray J's years of loyalty were not random. They were the loyalty of someone who was inside the system, not standing outside it. Hay has offered no physical evidence, but his account has spread because it solves the central mystery that Section 1 left open, why a defender became a destroyer.
And he was asking about her, and then he was asking me stuff like, you know, would you be interested in, like, you know, somebody watching? He was just asking some really, really bugged out questions. And I still have those emails. I still have all that, you know? So, like, that's one of the things that I was going to include in the book. I'm just trying to figure out
Hayes' credibility is complicated by his own past. He has admitted to fabricating the 2004 rumor that Jay Z and Rihanna were involved, a story he now says was created to promote her debut single. That admission cuts both ways. It proves he is willing to manufacture narratives for professional gain, but it also proves he had access to know what was actually happening at the time. He was in the rooms. He worked directly with Rihanna during the period when her relationship with Jay Z was being shaped. The man who planted the fake story says the real story is darker, and that history makes his current claims harder to dismiss as pure internet chatter. Hayes' allegations extend beyond Ray J into a pattern that other voices have been describing for years. Jaguar Wright, who has been making claims about industry power structures for more than a decade, has laid out a system where young artists were brought into close quarters with older figures and shaped in ways that left them unable to leave. Wright has pointed to Rihanna's signing at 17, the late-night meetings in high-rise offices, and the way Jay Z and L.A. Reid later told the story as a proud moment. In Wright's telling, the pride was not about a business deal, it was about control. She has said repeatedly that the pattern did not start with Rihanna, and that it did not end with her. The Diddy conviction in July of last year changed how claims like these land. Sean Combs was found guilty on related charges, a verdict that cracked open a space where previously unthinkable accusations suddenly became part of the public conversation. Wright and others had been saying for years that the industry operated on a hidden set of rules. The trial made that claim feel less like conspiracy and more like precedent. When a figure of that magnitude falls, the walls around other figures start to feel less permanent. Ray J's war is being fought in the shadow of that conviction, and the conviction has altered how people hear accusations that once seemed too wild to take seriously.
Now, Ray J does need our prayers. It ain't got nothing to do with him, being a really, really good, big, nice sponsor up over here. But we want him to see another day. He's a fun guy. I don't have any qualms with him. Ray J is just Ray J. He's just Brandy's little bad brother.
The Epstein files added a paper trail to a story that previously had only voices. Rihanna's name appeared in a call log from January 2018, and an FBI intake report from 2019 named Jay Z in an unverified tip. The DOJ released both documents with a warning that they might contain false material, but the fact that they were released at all changed the landscape. Suddenly, the speculation had an anchor. 2 months later, a shooter appeared at Rihanna's home. Law enforcement has never confirmed a connection, but the compressed timeline created a suspicion that will not disappear until investigators produce a motive. The longer the investigation stays open, the more the surrounding speculation hardens into something that feels less like rumor and more like a question that has not been answered. The significance of that paper trail extends beyond the simple presence of names in government documents. When the Department of Justice released the files in January, it did so under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, a piece of legislation that turned what had been sealed records into public material overnight. That meant the call log showing Rihanna's name was no longer rumor. It was an official record. The FBI intake report naming Jay Z was no longer a whisper. It was a document with a case number and a date stamp. The DOJ's warning that the files might contain false material did not undo the fact that the government had chosen to release them. It only added a layer of ambiguity that the public has had to navigate ever since.
I mean, why waste my time?
And sometimes you respond to something that brings way more attention to it, too.
That too. And it's just, it goes into another space, and then you just like, are y'all not listening to me?
Right. But then you'll have somebody else that'll say to you.
The legal machinery around the Epstein files has its own history with the people now at the center of this story. Alex Spiro, Jay Z's primary attorney, appeared in Epstein's own communications, which were released in the same tranche of documents. Epstein had sought Spiro out after corresponding with Kathy Rumler, the former Obama White House counsel, who was named as a backup executive in Epstein's will. That connection does not prove anything about the Carters, but it does place their legal representation inside a network that has been scrutinized across multiple high-profile cases. When the same lawyers appear across scandals involving Epstein, Weinstein, and now the Carters, the pattern becomes part of the story, whether anyone wants it to be or not. The fallout from the Epstein files has also touched people who were never named in the documents. Rihanna's boyfriend, A$AP Rocky, is signed to Jay Z's Roc Nation. His own legal representation in a past case came from Joe Tacopina, who now works alongside Spyro defending Roc Nation in a separate money laundering and racketeering lawsuit. Tacopina has been a recurring guest on the TMZ show co-hosted by Harvey Levin, who was named in the Epstein files as a good friend of Jeffrey Epstein. These are not accusations. They are connections that were not visible before the files were released. And they have created a web of association that the public is now tracing in real time. The timing of the shooting, coming 2 months after the files dropped, means that every one of these connections is now being examined through the lens of an active criminal investigation. Investigators have said they are looking at all aspects of the shooter's life, including her social media history and her prior legal entanglements. One of those entanglements was a petition she filed against Live Nation, the same corporation that is a co-owner of Jay Z's Roc Nation. Whether that connection matters is for law enforcement to determine, but the fact that it exists and that it surfaced in the weeks after the shooting means the investigation is unfolding inside a context already saturated with suspicion. The unanswered questions about motive are not being asked in a vacuum. They are being asked inside a story that has already become larger than any single document or event.
So what happens now is this is simply a civil complaint. And in a civil complaint, it goes through the technical legal process. Now, the distinction, Jessica, between civil and criminal, of course, is that civil is for monetary damages, right? The system can only reward you with money. There's allegations that this 13-year-old is suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, suffered depression, etc. So now you go to
What makes the current moment different from past scandals is the machinery that has always protected the Carter empire. Jay Z's primary attorney, Alex Spyro, has a history that runs through some of the most controversial legal defenses of the past decade. Spyro represented Harvey Weinstein and has been connected to Jeffrey Epstein's legal network through correspondence that surfaced in the files. He is now the man standing between the Carters and the wave of public scrutiny that has been building since January. The presence of that kind of legal firepower is not unusual for figures at this level. What is unusual is how much of it has been needed and how quiet it has remained. That quiet has become its own kind of signal. There have been no denials of Hayes' claims, no response to Jaguar Wright's pattern allegations, and no commentary on the Epstein files or the shooting. In a system built on image control, the absence of a response is not neutral. It reads as a system that has decided that speaking creates more risk than staying silent. That calculation only makes sense if the risk of engaging is higher than the risk of letting speculation run. And that risk calculation changes dramatically when a defector with a terminal prognosis starts talking. There is no way to outlast someone who has already made peace with the clock. Ray J's health means the usual dynamics no longer apply. A normal critic can be waited out. A critic with a terminal prognosis cannot. Every day that passes brings him closer to the point where his words freeze in place. And the system that would normally defend itself by outlasting the accusation has no way to outlast a clock that is already running. That asymmetry is what makes his current position so dangerous. He does not have to weigh long-term consequences. He only has to decide what to say before the window closes. The fact that he started talking in the same month the Epstein files dropped, 2 months before the shooting, means the window is closing now.
He's a good dude. Ray J's a good dude. So I'm gonna ask God to please heal this man fast, in a hurry. Please help this man get up real fast and go catch a rabbit. Apparently he's in the hospital from pneumonia. I think he having some chest pains and heart pains. He's 44 years old. He don't look 44. He still look 12.
The convergence of these forces has created a pressure field that the Carter empire has never faced before. The Epstein files gave the speculation an official paper trail. The shooting gave it a real-world danger that cannot be dismissed as gossip. Hay and Jaguar Wright gave it named accusers with industry histories who were in the rooms when the system was running. And Ray J gave it a narrator from inside the system who has already signaled that he will not be silent. 4 pressure points, all converging on the same names, all unresolved, all moving in the same direction. The machine that has controlled the narrative for decades has gone quiet in a way that sounds less like strategy and more like something else. What happens next depends on whether Ray J releases more before his health fails. It depends on whether investigators find a motive for the shooting that either confirms or disrupts the speculation. It depends on whether anyone else inside the Carter orbit decides that silence is no longer the safest option. The walls were built to keep things out. They were not built to hold when something breaks from the inside. And Ray J has already signaled that he is that something.
Down for the count. Down for the count. So TMZ had a video of him all up in the hospital. He was, strapped up and stuff. We are not putting out any graphic information like that. I just don't think it's right that they have that type of video. I think somebody from the nurses team probably sold it, to TMZ the same way they selling Diddy.
The story is not over. It is not even close to over. The shooting investigation is still open. The Epstein files are still sitting in the public record. Ray J is still leaking, and the machine that has controlled the narrative for decades has gone quiet in a way that sounds less like strategy and more like something else. What happens when a system designed to protect itself faces a threat it cannot outlast? What happens when the person inside knows where the walls are weakest? Those questions do not have answers yet, but the answers are coming. What do you think happens when a system this protected faces a defector with nothing left to lose? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We will be watching.